Good morning, Venerable.
Good morning.
How are you this
Good
morning?
afternoon. I'm good. I'm at the Maitreya Institute in Holland.
Ah,
I have
okay.
a different place.
Yes, you have a.
So I'm in the Gompa, which is really nice. Would you like me to start? You suddenly become quiet, Pema.
Just give me a second. Yeah, I
Oh,
had.
yes.
Yes.
All right. All right. We might be a little bit early, but we can just use this time to settle the mind. Give ourselves a few minutes to calm the mind, relax the mind. And in the meantime, I'm going to say hi, everyone. And I hope that you had a nice weekend and nice seeing you back. I think a few more people will tune in. So we're just going to start with a little meditation to find a posture that is suitable to get in line with who we really are, get in line with the universe, get in line with our potential, get in line with the natural flow of everything, however you want to call it. So wherever you're sitting, make sure that you sit comfortable and then turn your mind inwards. Return your mind inwards by focusing the mind on the body. You do not have to focus on a particular part of the body, but you can let the mind go around, scan the body, checking whether all your muscles are relaxed, checking where you give yourself good support from your bones, your skeleton. Scanning to observe what is going on. How you are feeling. And you do not have to come to a conclusion or understand or know, but just be focused on the body, on the feelings. And if you feel that your mind has settled enough, you can focus the mind on your breath. For instance, by observing the rising and falling of your abdomen. Every time when you breathe in and breathe out. The main thing is that the mind comes to the present moment. The body is always in the present moment. It's never in the past. It's never in the future. So when we focus the mind on the body, the mind is automatically in the present moment. And when the mind is in the present moment, the disturbing emotions, the thoughts naturally subside. They come to rest. And then the mind becomes clear, calm, focused. And then with that mind, we can set a positive motivation for this second week on the teachings, living life to the fullest. And think why you are doing this, why it is important for you, what you would like to get out of it, and what benefit you would like to see that comes from this. And then we can relax our attention to the meditation. And for whoever has joined in the last 5 minutes, also welcome to you to the second week of living life to the fullest. We already have done a whole week in which we tried to get an idea of what is holding us back from living life to the fullest. And so this week we'll have a look into how we can do things differently. What tools is Buddhism presenting, offering that we can use in order to maybe let go of these things that are preventing us from living life to the fullest, but also how we can develop qualities that are in line with living life to the fullest. So last week we mainly looked into what is holding us back from doing so, and we started with saying we are not living life in the present moment. Our mind is not in the present moment. Most of the time, our mind is either in the past, rethinking of what has happened, or the mind is already running towards the future, thinking about what might happen. Which means that we are not present there where the experiences happen. Instead, we are present with what we think has happened, what we think might happen, which means we are present with our delusions. We are present with our mental engagement. We are present with what we believe, but that is not something that really has happened, right? Even when we go over what happened in the past, the way we think when we go over it is not what actually happens, it's the way we think about what has happened. Right? We need to see that difference, because sometimes it seems so useful to go back to the past, and it seems so useful to go to the present. And in some cases it can be, right? Don't hear me say that you would never think about it and that it has no benefit. But most of the time, what just happens when it happens automatically, when you do not think about it, when your mind goes there naturally, I would say that mind is always a mind that is motivated or directed or pushed by the afflictions. That is not a mind that is consciously trying to resolve something. True? Check that. Sometimes people can get like, whoa, what is she saying? You know, but check. And if you think this is not true, feel free to put it in the chat, you know, because I'm also happy to check what I'm saying. And if I'm saying something that is not in accordance with how things are, I'm very happy to correct that. Not being with our mind in the present moments means that we do not have our full energy. We do not have definitely our mental energy in the present moment. And it is the mental energy where the wisdom is residing. It is the mental energy where the concentration is. It is the mental energy where we have intention. So that mental energy, if we could focus that in the present moment, we are strong. We can use everything that we have to deal with the situation that is actually happening. When we are in the past or we are in the future, that energy is not available to use in the present moment. The moment we act upon whatever is happening or whatever we are thinking, the action is in the present moment. If we want to discriminate, is this a beneficial action or not? The more mental energy we have with us, the better we can look into, is this really beneficial or not? So the more energy we have in the present moment, the more meaningful and the more wise and more beneficial our actions of body and speech can be. So at the moment, we don't have all that energy with us because we have this habit of having the mind jumping to the past or to the present. Then another problem that comes with that is that we actually believe that what we are thinking, all the things that are appearing to the mind, that they are reality itself. And you might think, oh no, I know that that is not reality itself. But in all these moments that we are not aware of the present moment, when we are not really checking what is happening in the present moment, our mind comes with a story that we project onto whatever events are happening in our life. And then we believe that these events, that these thoughts and images and ideas that we have of what is happening, we believe that that is what actually happened. And I'm sure you know all these, there are these games where people are standing in a line and last person whispers something in the ears of the person in front of him. And they pass on that message. That last person hears something very different than that first person heard, right? Often what we hear is not exactly what has been said. Often what we see is not exactly what happened. Then when what we think we hear, what we think we see, if that triggers something in our mind, the mind starts adding something. And then when we keep repeating that, we believe that that is what is actually was happening. And so this we have to be, when the mind is in the present moment, that can happen less, right? We need to catch ourselves. Then when things happen and we do have the feeling or the belief, this is what really happened, we have to check. Is that really true? Sometimes it's helpful to call someone who was there and say, listen, I have this impression of this and this and this, and what did you observe? And then talk about it. Right? Sometimes people have a different perspective. Sometimes people have different observations. So, but that is a problem for us, and we need to be aware of that. We mix the appearances of the mind with reality itself. Then where is this all coming from? It is all coming from the self-grasping mind. The mind that believes that the self exists as an independent entity, independent of anything else, independent of causes and conditions, independence of its parts, which are the body and the mind, independence of the mind, independent of the mind. Sorry, independence and independent is confusing. So we believe that the self-grasping mind, we believe that the self exists in a manner that is not in line with reality itself. We believe that the self exists more permanent, more unitary, and more independent than the self exists in actuality. So we exaggerate qualities and project that onto the self, and these qualities do not exist on the self or within the self. In dependence on these qualities, we have this appearance of me, and in dependence on that, we have the appearance of other. And so then the more delusions arise in the mind, the stronger there is a differentiation between me and other. There becomes more and more separation between me and other sentient beings. In dependence on a self-grasping mind, we have the self-cherishing mind, which is very self-centered and who feels that, it is all about me, and whatever I experience is so much more and so much more important and so much more interesting and so much more worthwhile to share than anything else that others experience. So that's a self-cherishing mind. And then in dependence on the self-grasping and the self-cherishing mind, due to holding on to the self, when pleasant feelings arise in the mind, attachment follows. And when unpleasant feelings arise in the mind, aversion follows. And then from that, all the other delusions arise in the mind. And so just as the self-grasping mind has a distorted view of reality, in the same way, attachment and aversion have a distorted view of reality. They exaggerate the positive and negative qualities of an object or a person. And on the basis of that, we will have unrealistic expectations of the objects or the persons. And because our expectations are not realistic, the object or the person can never fulfill what we actually expect from it. And so I think it was on Friday that we spoke about the 8 worldly dharmas, where we explained the things that we are so attached to and the things that we have aversion to. And that these the 8 worldly dharmas, they are mainly concerned, they're all obsessed with me, right? What do I want and what do I not want? But then they are very short-term goals. They're just about this life. I want to be happy now in this life. I'm not thinking about any other lifetime. I'm not thinking about bigger goals than just me. So that's a little bit what we did last week, right? We made up the, we spoke about our sickness and the causes of that sickness. And so today we're going to look into how can we do things differently, because if we can see that whatever we experience is actually coming from our own mind, has not so much to do with what is happening outside. It has something to do with it. What happens outside of us or in our body can be the trigger for thoughts and feelings to arise in the mind, but they're not the real cause, nor are they the reality of what we observe coming from outside. Most of what we experience, 90%, 95%, maybe even more, is just coming from our own mind because of the way we react and because the way we think about it. So if we could do something about that, we cannot change what happens in the world. Maybe on a small scale, we can, and things will change when we change. But that's not the prior object for change. The prior object for change when we practice Buddha Dharma is our own mind. The way we see things, the way we view things, the way we react to things, the way I think viewing things is you know, our perspective. And to give you an idea about that, I'll tell you a little story that you can find in the Lam Rim, you know, because when we experience something that makes us happy, we believe that is real happiness, and what made us happy is something that makes people really happy. And when we experience suffering, we believe it is real suffering, and it is coming from something that is actually causing me real suffering, which means it would cause everybody else also suffering. But suffering is not, suffering is suffering depending on our view, even that, you know. So the example goes like that. A very rich man lives with his family in a beautiful big house, and the kids, they're going to a fantastic school. Wow, that is really good karma, no? Ripening good karma, everybody is happy. But then he loses his business, and the business goes bankrupt. He loses his job, he needs to sell his house, and you think, oh my gosh, so much suffering. That is real suffering. But now maybe this is the chance that this man can do what he always wanted to do, you know, because in his heart, he wasn't really a businessman. He wanted to live on a tiny little farm somewhere in the province with a few little goats and a few little animals, and, you know, just have the easy life. So now, having the business gone bankrupt, he still has a little bit of money left, and he can buy that little farm. Oh, so happy, fantastic. But then on the farm, working on the tractor, his son falls from the tractor, and he falls into a kind of machinery and gets badly injured. Oh, what an unhappiness, you know, so much suffering. I wish I never had gone to the farm. I never had bought this farm. I never had come out here to live here, and because that is so much suffering. But thanks God, the hospital is very close, and the doctors who are there are fantastic, and the nurses are very good. So the son heals quite well. The son gets saved and heals quite well. Fantastic. He's going to be alive. At least he's not going to die, you know, so you feel happy again. But then after some time, his leg starts to react to what happened and doesn't heal properly, so they have to amputate the leg. Oh my gosh, so much suffering. So you can hear the stories, right? When something happens like that, the mind goes to tell ourselves that it is so much suffering. And so then after some time, the leg gets amputated, but the boy recovers well, and the insurance covers all the costs. So in a way, you know, although it is bad that the leg is amputated, there is still a big relief, because at least we do not have to pay that for ourselves, and the recovery has gone really quickly. And then the boy comes out of the hospital and he wants to go back to the normal life. And before, he was really good in sport, but his team leader says, no, you cannot be with us anymore. So then there was a lot of suffering, because he cannot do anymore what he was doing before. And then the war starts, a war. And so all the boys, they are asked to go to fight in the war, except the ones who are handicapped. You know, oh, how lucky that he has an amputated leg. He doesn't have to go to the war, right? So you can continue this story and see that situations, they in and of themselves might seem to be the cause for happiness or the cause for suffering. In a different perspective, they can actually turn around and become the opposite. So when bad things happen to us, don't think that is really, really, really just bad. You know, maybe in a later time in life, you think, oh, thanks God, that happened to me. I'm calling God, but, you know, whoever, you can replace the name God for whatever you feel as the big power. It's just an old habit from the past that I have. So you can think, you know, how great that that happened to me, because now my situation is actually quite good. If this and this and this would have happened to me, if I, for instance, you live in a country where you are very happy, where you would like to stay, where you would last, where you would spend the rest of your life, and then causes and conditions come together, you have to leave the country. Your biggest pain, you have to leave the country, you wanted to spend it the rest of your life. Now you can't do that. But then maybe after a couple of years, something happens in that country that you think, oh, I'm so happy I'm not there. I wouldn't want to be in that situation. So we never know, and so one way of dealing with that is that you trust that whatever happens to you is going to work out for the best, especially when we start a day with setting a motivation. When we generate one time a day or more time a day, the generation of a motivation that suggests that we want to be of greatest benefit to all sentient beings. That it is not so much about what we like or what we don't like, but we have to trust that where we end up and the situation that we are ending up in is the one that is going to be of greatest benefit to sentient beings. And if we experience some suffering in that situation, instead of thinking, oh, why me? And I didn't want to do this, and now I'm going to regret that I have been generating this motivation, we can also think, oh, wow, yeah, although this is a hard situation for me, I'm so happy to take on this hardship for the benefit of all sentient beings. What I'm experiencing is nothing compared to what most sentient beings are experiencing. And trusting that wherever life is going, it will work out exactly the way it needs to. Right? That's the start of today. So now let me go back to how we can transform our mind, seeing things differently. So they say that it is actually, in order to practice pure Dharma, it is actually better if we have difficult conditions. They say it is better to be poor than to be rich. It is better to be criticized instead of to be praised. It is better to have discomfort than comfort, because having a good life, having a good life means that we exhaust our merit, all the positive energy that we created by doing virtuous actions in the past. When we experience positive things, that merit gets exhausted. For what? For just pleasure in this life, But when I get criticized, when I do not have enough material wealth, when I have a lot of discomfort, every time when the suffering arises in the mind, I'm reminded that I can do something about it. I can do something about it. And in the same, so I can use that opportunity to transform my mind. At the same time, my negative karma gets more and more exhausted. I purify my negative karma. So one thing that we need to do in order to transform our mind into the Dharma, into a more happy mind, is that we need to let go of the attitude that does not want to suffer, that does not want to have problems, And if we look into the 8 worldly dharmas, we looked into that when suffering arises, we react with aversion. We don't want it. And then from there, anger comes. And from there, all these negative emotions come. So if we say, okay, I'm just going to be fine, whatever is going to happen. When problems come, they come. When suffering comes, it comes. So if we could accept it and say, okay, that's problems, that's suffering, that's just another aspect of reality, I'll accept it. And we really accept it without having aversion in the mind. It will make a huge difference. First of all, if we think that when we suffer, you know, or when we feel that we get harmed, we get unhappy and we think about it again and again and again in order to stop the suffering. But in actuality, we cannot stop the suffering. We just increase the suffering. And so if we have a habit like that, then every small little problem will become a huge problem. We can get anxious when something little happens. Oh my God, this is happening to me. And then the mind starts making this huge problem. But in actuality, not much has happened, you know. So if we could turn that around and we can see every problem as something beneficial, maybe even the cause for happiness, then the unhappy, suffering mind will stop. So for instance, if something happens that we don't like, you know, and that we go like, ooh, instead of seeing it as a burden, could you see it as an opportunity for growth? Could you see it as an opportunity to learn something? What can I learn from this situation? How can I, you know, sometimes when we suffer, we are actually pushed in a way that we feel that we have no tools to react. So you could think, okay, what do I need in order to come out of this? Or what do I miss that I cannot come out of it? And so you use it to increase the awareness about yourself in a difficult situation, about your qualities, or maybe you feel you have a lack of qualities. Increase that awareness and then think, okay, how can I do things so that my qualities start increasing? You can see something difficult that happens to you as a challenge. Wow, this is really pushing me. I'm out of my comfort zone. So what can I do? What if I see this as a challenge? You know, and you make it a little bit exciting for yourself. I'll come back to your question in a minute, because I want to teach a little bit further. What we also can do is when problems arise, if we can somehow mix it with virtue. For instance, a problem arises. A problem arises, whether that is coming from outside, whether that is coming from internally, and we can say, okay, that is arising. Normally we would react with aversion, and now we say, first I have to accept that. And then I can say, okay, how can I use this mixed with the Dharma? How can I use this to create virtue? Once I can do that with my mind, receiving the problem, accepting it, and then even having determination to create a virtuous action, independence on that, you know, that's already huge. So much suffering would already be gone, even if our virtuous action is very tiny. That comes from that. That's already fantastic. Our main problem is our aversion for the problems. So as soon if we can adopt the attitude that we welcome the problem, you know, instead of saying, I don't want that, you know, oh my gosh, I hate it. We say, oh, problem, welcome. Come in, another problem, another opportunity, another challenge. How can I use that to be of benefit? How can I use that to transform my mind? How can I use that to learn? How can I use that as an opportunity? How can I use that? So that empowers, right? I'm not saying it is easy. I'm not saying it is pleasurable, especially not in the beginning. But you know, when you become a little bit experienced, it actually might become more pleasure. But these are things that can be done, because whatever qualities are in the mind, nothing of that exists inherently. Whatever problems we have in the mind, nothing of that exists inherently. Nothing of that really, truly belongs to us. This is something that came to us due to causes and conditions. It is something that came to us, whether it is a difficult life that we led, whether it is we were born in a place where people have certain habits of thinking and we adopted that thinking, whether it is a residue of past life thinking, whether it really doesn't matter, you know, no matter how long the thinking or the conditioning has been in your mind, it can be changed, because that conditioning, that way of reacting, is not something that is inherently part of the mind. If what we are doing is inherently part of the mind, I do not have to give you any teachings. You do not have to go to any person who might be able to help you, because we would not be able to change anything. But because it doesn't exist inherently, we have all the opportunities to change. So as long as we are in samsara, we will experience suffering, because samsara is in the nature of suffering, right? We cannot just jump out of that. Now it's not there anymore. If we can walk through that suffering without being too much affected by it, I think we are doing a great job. Samsara is not externally, you know, it's not what is happening outside. Samsara is how we react to things. So when we can manage these reactions, when we can redirect our reactions, our samsara will become less fluctuating, or our samsara will become less intense. Our samsara will become like you know, it's like we are walking through a war field or something. And normally you try to move away and you try to move away so that you don't feel too much suffering. And then when there is something nice that you see, you want to move towards that. So what we do with the practice is that we walk through the field without being distracted by whatever is happening there. And the mind is calm and clear. You know, then we're doing pretty good. The mind will be more relaxed and less irritated. And so a few things that we can do in order to have an attitude that is, instead of experiencing aversion when problems arise, experiences joy or can be joyful. One way of doing that, I have written it here, but now I'm thinking, maybe. So what I've written here is, you can think of people who have bigger problems than you. That's not really joyful, but you can be less depressed about your own situation, you know? So something happens to you, and for instance, you wanted to go to the Dharma Center, but the Dharma Center is closed due to COVID, and you feel a bit depressed, and you really wanted to have the connection and blah, blah, blah. You could say, well, at least I have a lot of memories of going to the Dharma Center. Or I can see that maybe in the future I will have opportunities, but there are so many people in the world who do not even have the thought of ever going to a Dharma Center. So compared to them, I'm quite well off. At least I have the thought. At least I have, you know, and even if I cannot go in person, I can follow things online. And I can connect through, I don't know, you can connect with other practitioners, maybe on Zoom or Skype or something like that, through the phone. Many sentient beings cannot do that. Right? Or when something happens to you, you get sick and you get COVID and you're in bed for 6-7 days and you come out and you're quite good, you know. You can complain about you having COVID, but you can also think, wow, only 7 days. You know, how many people don't suffer for 2-3 months, sometimes even longer. And having had the disease now, I have the antibodies, so my immune system is quite strong. Wow, fantastic. You know, depending on how you formulate your situation, you will feel happiness, joy, or you feel suffering. True. When we experience a lot of suffering, you know, it is a very good way to eliminate pride. We all have pride, right? We all have this feeling of I'm better, or I know better, or somehow due to maybe the wealth we have, or the appearance that we have, we feel that we are more worthy or more important than other sentient beings. That's pride, you know, this elevated feeling of I. So when we get criticized, fantastic for the pride, right? The pride diminishes. If we are with people who are just praising us, pride increases. So for Dharma practice, and even for ourselves becoming more connected with reality, it's much better when we get criticized. You know, that helps to diminish our delusions and get more in touch with reality itself. If we have a lot of pride, then the result will be that in the next life, we will suffer from being reborn in a low caste, for instance, or we will suffer from bad reputation, or from not being respected, or from not having the capability to work for the happiness for others. These can all be the result of too much pride. And because of that, too much pride, if we have that, we cannot develop the qualities of the mind, you know, because we think we're already fantastic. It is a mind that just blocks you from improving even further. But when we can think about our own mistakes, when we can think about our ignorance, when we can think about all the things that we do not understand, all the things that we do not know, you know, then the pride lessens. Then there is much more capacity to learn, to progress, to improve. So thinking about living life to the fullest, pride is a huge obstacle, you know, because when it is there, you know, pride, we hold it here, like, I don't need that, you know. Then what is there to gain? Somebody, you know, I think it's somewhere in the Lamrim where it says, if you think that you understand a text, or that you know a text, and maybe even you can recite the whole text by heart, just look at the cupboard and see the whole Kangyur or the whole Tangyur, and how many texts are in there that you have never seen and that you do not know about. And even if you would recite these texts the rest of your life, you will never be able to understand them all. It's like we do not have that capacity. And when you see that and you're okay with that, you know, the pride gets a bit reduced. So what we can also do to be more joyful and have less aversion is that we train in taking refuge. You know, if we understand that all our problems are coming from karma and our delusions, they're coming not from outside. They are connected to me, what I have done in the past, the way I think, the way I react. If I can see that and I can take everything like that, then by taking refuge again and again and again, I'm creating the causes for more joy in my life, you know. Taking refuge, one of the main things of taking refuge is that we take refuge in our own potential to become a Buddha, in our own potential to live life to the fullest. We have that potential. And so by taking refuge in the Buddha, we take refuge in that potential. The more we fulfill that potential, the more joy will arise in the mind. And another way for joy to arise in the mind is when we rejoice. When we see success and happiness and good qualities in others, we can rejoice in their results, because whatever they experience is the result of their positive karma. So we can say, how wonderful that you experienced that result. That must mean that you have created so much good karma. How wonderful that you did that. And you have respect for them. It's not coming from nothing, right? It's not, wealth is not coming from greed. Wealth, although, sometimes when I look into the world nowadays, I think that's just greed that creates that more wealth. But actually, when we bring it back to the Dharma, we have to say that the wealth that some people are gathering, that everyone is gathering, whoever gathers wealth, that's coming from merit. That's coming from virtue. That is coming from having done generous actions. Then if when wealth comes, you react with greed, that is just creating the causes for what is going to ripen next. If we allow pride or jealousy to arise, when we see people who are experiencing good fortune, then what we are doing is we actually creating the causes for obstacles to arise in the future. And it is very difficult if we have a jealous mind, that doesn't rejoice in the good fortune of others. We are not going to be happy, right? We feel miserable. Oh, I really don't like it that they have this and they have that. And I feel so much hurt in my heart when I see that. And it's our unhappiness. The moment we can say, hey, wait a minute, there is also karma. And these people are just experiencing the result of their good karma. I experience the result of, when it hurts so much, maybe it's my negative karma. It's my attachment. I need to learn to let that go. So the best way to do that is to rejoice in their good fortune. And say, okay, now the ball is at their side. How wonderful. I rejoice. One day I will experience something like that, but now it's their turn. Fantastic. I rejoice. And so when we experience the result of our negative karma, when we have suffering experiences, it can be an opportunity to reflect on karma, on, for instance, the 4 characteristics of karma, that karma is definite, that karma increases, and that we will not experience any result without having created the cause. And for whatever karma we have created, that will never get lost, that will come to us one day. Okay, what else do we have? So when we experience problems or unhappiness, we can use that to create the causes for happiness. I already mentioned that, but you can, for instance, say, you feel that you do not have enough money to buy food. Maybe you have money, but you feel you don't have enough to buy proper food, which means you do not allow yourself to buy proper food. You could think when you go shopping, I'm going to go shopping and buy nice things for the guru. And so you buy nice things, and when you come home, you first offer it all to the guru, to the altar somehow. Maybe you have a place in your house where there is a picture of the guru, You first offer it all to the Guru. Then, after some time, you take the leftovers, right? That's a possibility that you can do. You can also think, I feel that I do not have enough money to buy proper food. That is a kind of a stinginess towards myself. You know what? I'm going to offer food to Sangha. I'm going to offer food to homeless people. I'm going to offer food to others because I want them to have a good life. And then maybe slowly you feel like, oh, I can also give that to myself, you know, or the conditions in your life change so that you feel that you have enough money in order to buy good food. And so then we can also use our meditation to change that self-cherishing attitude that is about me, into an attitude that is cherishing others. And I think on the last day, on Thursday, we'll talk more about how to generate bodhicitta. So when we can be more joyful when suffering arises, then our mind will become more gentle, it will become more flexible, it will become broader and more open, and you will become a more easy person to be with. If you are less reactive, you become easier to be with. You will have more courage, you will have more confidence, and you will have less obstacles to your practice. And all negative circumstances that arise, if you can change your perspective towards them, they can all become circumstances that are good and auspicious, right? And when something drops on your head, instead of saying, oh my gosh, you could say, oh my gosh, my crown chakra just got opened, you know? Whatever, you can make up a way of seeing whatever happens to you in a positive way. And if you can do that, then your mind will be always content. It will be always happy. And therefore it will be peaceful, right? Because you're not scared anymore for what might happen that you cannot handle. You get this confidence, I can handle it. I can just transform it. It doesn't matter whatever happens to me. I know how to deal with it. I know how to be with it. It's not going to destroy me. It's not going to discourage me. It is not going to deeply harm me. You know, if we look into life, yes, some people, they do get physically harmed and sometimes in a way that they get killed. But many people, they just live their life. Not much happens. You know, the main thing that happens is what happens in our mind, the stories that we create about our life. So if we change the story, we change our life. True. Let me have a look at the question from Gilles. Doesn't that create some sort of passivity to change unfortunate things going on, not only for us, but for others, for the planet? Tell me what you mean. Or can we say suffering due to being in samsara inherently exists? You can say suffering due to being in samsara, they always go together. But that is something different than saying they exist inherently. Inherent existence has the connotation of independent. So if you would say suffering exists inherently in samsara, then you actually say suffering is independent of samsara. And if suffering would be independent of samsara, then even if we would change the suffering, we would not change samsara. Or even if we would change samsara, we would not change the suffering. Right? So inherent existence is something that doesn't exist at all. Nothing in the world exists inherently. The nature of everything that exists is that it lacks inherent existence, that it does not exist inherently, which means it exists independent of causes and conditions, of its parts, and of the mind. When we're going to see things as being inherently existent and they become independent of anything else, they become independent of causes and conditions, which means you cannot change it. Things become permanent. They become, not just they're always like that, but they become unchangeable. Debbie says constructive criticism, though. Is that you're saying I only want constructive criticism? Not the negative criticism that is just there to criticize you. But we cannot choose about that. Sure, when you are in a working situation and you're not going to say to people, okay, you can criticize me however you like, and I will use it for my Dharma practice. That is your silent practice, your secret practice. You're not going to talk about that. And when you are in the workplace, you do encourage constructive criticism, and you do discourage criticism just to criticize. Right? So in a normal world, we try to work on a world where people, when they want to criticize, that they use constructive criticism. But we're not in control, right? We cannot control each and every sentient being. So sometimes somebody will make criticisms to us that have no ground, they are not true at all. And so we have to deal with that. We have to find a way with our mind to be with that without that becoming the cause for us to be unhappy. We need to find a way to be with that so that we transform whatever shit just came to us, we transform it into something positive. So saying that you can use this criticism in order to eliminate your pride or to diminish your pride doesn't mean that I'm saying, therefore, this kind of criticism is good, right? Or we should criticize each other like that in order to diminish the pride. I'm not saying that at all. All right? Is that all right? Debbie, I'm not seeing Debbie. Let me have a look if I can see you guys. Hi, Debbie. Is that all right with your criticism? Okay, good. So let's say maybe permanently then. Permanent. So in Buddhism, we use certain words and they have a very specific meaning. So when we talk about permanent, we talk about unchanging nature. And what you mean is, I think, when something is there all the time. Maybe we could say everlasting. I'm just looking where you are. Right? So permanent means unchanging. Samsara is not unchanging. Samsara is not permanent. The relation between, we don't even call the relation between suffering and samsara a permanent relationship. But we could say that they always go together. They go hand in hand. When there is, when we have a mind that is caught up in samsara, we will always experience suffering. Everything is in the nature of suffering. That suffering, we can transform that into happiness, into the causes of happiness. And the more we do that, the more our mind becomes less caught up in samsara. To really get out of samsara, we need to realize the nature of samsara. We need to realize that samsara does not exist inherently, that it is made up by the mind. And so we need to realize that samsara is empty of inherent existence. And when we realize that samsara is empty of inherent existence, and therefore the self that is grasping at things to exist inherently, also that self is empty of existing inherently. And when I really realize that, samsara, it's the beginning of the end of samsara. All right. Sukat says, so we cannot eliminate suffering, but we can change the way we deal with or look at suffering. Suffering is an unpleasant experience, That happens in the mind. Then there are conditions that are, or there are circumstances that are conditions for these unpleasant experiences to arise. What we normally do is we try to change these conditions. We try to change these circumstances. And we are not changing the way we react to the circumstances. And so the most suffering that we experience is coming from our own reaction. I think 90% of what we experience is coming from our reaction that comes after we have met with the circumstances. So I think that is the first place where we start practicing. Then the more you practice that, the less circumstances will arise that trigger a suffering experience or an unpleasant experience. Or even when they arise, that unpleasantness, you experience for 10 seconds, you experience for 10 minutes, then it's gone. What we do is we go into this, oh, this hurts so much, I hate it so much, and then we make up a story about ourselves in that situation, about that other person, about the circumstances, about the rest of our life, and we keep ruminating that story, and that is causing the suffering. That is the real samsara. If we could say to ourselves, and now stop. Yes, you're hurting from what just happened to you. Just feel it. Just be with it. Talk kind to yourself. Nourish yourself. Hold yourself. Give yourself the space to go through that experience. Know that you're not the only one who is experiencing this, that you share this with many others. And then after some time, it's gone. That makes life much more simple. Then you will be much happier no matter what happens to you. See a few hands. Gilles, you had another question?
Yes. Hello, Venerable.
Hi.
Thank you for the answers. Yes, I wrote something, then I realized, that's not the correct terminology, but you corrected it. Thank you. So with suffering, there is something else. Maybe I'd like to have your further explanation, if possible. The anger is not I. All the pleasant feelings, they're not I. All the unpleasant feelings, they're not I. But then there is the suffering, and somehow suffering, there is a self that is suffering, right? And there is a self who is looking for cessation of suffering. So there is this motivation, there is this some kind of intention. So I'm wondering where that is coming from, or how we can, discriminate that from all the other, mental creations and all the other intentions that may arise. What is the difference between the intention to be enlightened or free from suffering and all the other intentions that may arise?
So when we suffer, are you the suffering, or is suffering just something that arises in the mind and dissolves back into the mind?
Sorry, can you repeat?
When you are suffering, is suffering something that is something that really belongs to you, or is that something that arises in the mind and dissolves back into the mind?
That arises in the mind.
Yeah, so similar like anger. Anger arises in the mind and dissolves back into the mind. Suffering arises in the mind and dissolves back into the mind. Does that mean that that suffering is not real? No, suffering is real. What we experience is real. What we feel is real. But it is not inherently real. It does not exist inherently. So the way we react to it, which happens in the second moment, the next moment, the reaction is already there. So it is very difficult to discriminate what is the experience that I have and what is my reaction adding to the experience. That is very, very difficult. And so that can take a long time to observe your thinking, to observe your reaction, to observe how you are with the feeling that you have, in order to distinguish these two and in order to lessen your contribution to the suffering. So the one that says, I want to be free from suffering, I want to be happy. There are two aspects of the I. One is the one that we believe to exist inherently, which covers actually the whole self. But then there is somewhere a self which is very subtle, which is a self which is merely labeled by the mind. The name that we are giving to the self, because in every moment of awareness, there is something that we are aware of. There is an experience, and there is an observer of the experience, or an observation of the experience, or a knowing of the experience. So we label that knower as the self, right? You can say, I'm observing this in my mind. That self is labeled in dependence on the knower of the mind. That self is not the knower of the mind, but I can call that the self, right? Just as that my body is not the self, but I can call it the self. Just as this hand is not the self, but I can call it my hand. Just as whatever I smell is not the self, but I can say I smell, right? So I have the intention. And so if I have a lot of awareness with the intention, I can purify my intention and I can make it more and more virtuous. If I'm not so aware of myself, I will live more on the automatic emotional reactions of aversion and attachment. And then my actions will become more non-virtuous. And the results are dependent on that. Right. So by bringing more awareness to your intention, you can make your intention more virtuous. Therefore, the results are less suffering. So therefore, your mind can become more subtle. So therefore, your mind can become more clear, can get more understanding of the Dharma, can practice more in depth, and it is like, sometimes I compare samsaras like this spiral that we have gone into, repeating the same again and again, and we get entangled more and more. And so we have to go the other way around, unspiral, go. And so that is a process where we go around and around and around, but it becomes more subtle, more clear, less polluted by the delusions. And then slowly, that's the way how we have to get to a certain point so that we can generate the conditions that we can realize the nature of samsara.
And can we say that even though the mind is still polluted today, there are instances when it momentarily cleans up, like instances of having an insight or instances of that pure intention, where we really feel, yes, this is the virtuous way to go,
Yes.
So there can be that access actually to that subtle mind, but I feel like it opens up and that it closes down. So
Yes.
I guess the work for us is to have more access to it for longer, so
Yes.
that it's clearing, right?
Yes, yes, that's what we would like, right? So sometimes we have a glimpse.
Yeah.
Wow, and we feel like that's really who I am. That's really what I want to do. And then the next moment, all the crap comes again and we feel like, where is it? I just felt it. I can't access it anymore. But I think that shows that we have not enough habituation with that mind, that we have habituated much more with the other types of mind. So they come easier, they come faster. So when we practice, even if you cannot feel it as pure as maybe sometimes you have these pure moments, so then when we start practicing, when the mind is a bit clouded, you might not feel it is that pure. But at the same time, it is kind of artificial, but at the same time, by doing it, you are training your mind to go in a certain movement of thinking, in a certain way of thinking. And so then that will be a condition for that spontaneous feeling to come more quickly. And then when it comes, you can maybe focus on it longer. And so then slowly we can change the habit from first having the habit of having more the negative mind into a habit of having more the positive mind.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. Suhas. What is your question?
Ma'am, actually, the previous question you sort of explained it, but let's say I'm walking in a field.
Yeah.
And to my right is the horizon, the twilight, and all the so-called pleasant colors. And to my left, there's a dead carcass, a dead animal, or whatever. So if we move towards connection, and we really have no control over it. It's automatic, and we only realize it after the fact. So how do I still choose the middle way? Once I do realize that I have moved towards my right, do I still not linger there and see what I'm adding and see my reaction to it, and then keep moving ahead? Or where do I stand? What is my human agency?
So are you saying you go through a field where at one side is all pleasant, beautiful things, and at the other side is unpleasant things? What do I do? So the automatic reaction is to indulge in the beauty, no? So Buddhism doesn't say you have to indulge in the things that are not nice. It is not that we have to go there. But you can see that both pleasant and unpleasant things are of the same nature. They're both samsaric nature. One is pulling you, one is pushing you away, but they're both the same nature. And the fact that one is pulling you and one is pushing you is because of your karma, because of it is a result of actions that you have done in the past. And it can be that if you change your actions at a certain point, that what was pushing you away, you start to find attractive, right? That is, which means that something being attractive or being repulsive is coming from your mind, from your judgment. It has nothing to do with the thing outside of you, right? Are you with me?
Yes, ma'am. We are circling back to inherent existence.
So nothing exists inherently like that. And so the moment you can see it, like I have an aversion to this person because they're doing this and this, but this is my projection, this is my focus, this is my the irritation is coming in my mind. It's not coming from them, you know, then you can address it in your mind. How to look differently, how to be differently. For instance, instead of you being focused on the agitation that is happening in your mind, you could be focused on how can I be of benefit to this person? Or maybe you focus on something that you do find pleasant in the person. And you keep repeating that, you know. And it's not that when you are very agitated by something that you find unpleasant is going to change in a minute into something that you like, you know. It's not that easy. But it is our responsibility to do things differently, right? If I stay in my reaction of agitation and I keep thinking about that, oh, what an awful person, and oh, they're like this and they're like that, I put out to the universe all these negativities, you know. First of all, that's going to come back to me one day. But also in terms of energetically, what are we contributing to the world? You know, it's not a positive thing. Even if we don't speak about it, even if we don't act upon it, it's not a positive thing. So if we want to change our world, we need to change this way of reacting, right? So we have to see that it is not beneficial. If the agitation is so big that we cannot do anything about it, we first remove ourselves from the person. And then we think about it. Why do I get so agitated? What do I see? What does it remind me of? Why do I react like that? How could I see that person differently so that I do not have such a reaction? What can I focus upon? How can I transform my mind from a self-cherishing mind or a self-obsessed mind into a mind that is there for her? How can I, you know, we can ask all these questions in order to help the mind to get to another mindset of not being agitated. Right? So when you walk through a field where one part is beautiful and the other part is not beautiful, you just keep walking. And there is beauty and there is something that you don't like, but the beauty, you feel the attraction, right? It's not about that you say, wow, this is very beautiful, this is not beautiful, but it is the attraction that follows. It is the aversion that follows. That is the problem.
So
right?
I try to see what I am projecting onto it, what I am adding to what is already there, and stop the mental engagement and try not to follow them.
You try to stop. You try to see that a lot of that when you see, I think you first try to see if there is really a reaction that wants to go towards what you like, because it is that reaction that is what causes us the problem. It is not the discriminating mind that says, oh, that is beautiful. You know, I can find things beautiful. There is no problem. But then when I want to have it, the problem comes. But I can enjoy the beauty, right? When I just can enjoy the beauty and I'm not attracted to wanting to have it. Also, the ugly things somehow become less ugly. Don't ask me how it works. But if there are less delusions of attachment and aversion in the mind, you can start seeing everything in its beauty. No problem with that, right? So I think better be focused on the mind that gets attracted to want to move into one direction, or has aversion, you know, or has strong judgment.
Thank you.
Right? Okay. All right. Any more questions? Is everyone good? Good. Good. A little question from Eric. There's a nice quote from a monk at Plum Village about not rushing to see the beautiful sunset. He said that the earth and the sun are made of the same material, and also that the same material is also in me. So if it's already within, then why rush? There is also a story from Lama Zopa. It's a nice one, Eric. There's one story from Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who was with one of his attendants. What was his name? The French monk. He passed away already. And they arrived somewhere, and there was this fantastic sunshine. And he says, "Oh, this is sunset. This is such a beautiful sunset." And Lama Zopa Rinpoche said, "Just samsara, just samsara, just the suffering of samsara. You know, no, it doesn't matter what it's all suffering of samsara." And I think what we do is we think, "Oh, that's so beautiful." Then the mind is right there. I want it. I want to experience that. I want to be there. I want to feel it. I want to, that is the grasping mind. But if there is a beautiful sunset and you pass it and you enjoy, I think just enjoy. Right? Enjoy the colors, enjoy the feeling, enjoy. But don't believe it is a really beautiful sunset that we want to repeat and hold on to, and because it is just an aspect of samsara. Right? There is nothing worth it that way to grasp onto to make it permanent, or to have it, or to make it our own. There's nothing that has that value in samsara. All right. We can do a meditation on an aspiration to fulfill your potential. And tomorrow I'll start talking about the 6 perfections, how we can practice them, and when we can practice them. And if you have more, so this is what I want to do, what I did today about transforming the mind, how we can see things in a different light. Tomorrow we'll talk about the perfections, and then the last 2 days we'll talk about the wisdom and bodhicitta. And if you have other ideas, please put them in the chat. I'm happy to look at that as well. So let's do a little meditation. And because often when we think about fulfilling our own potential, part of our mind is this disbelief. The mind that thinks, "Oh, that's not really possible." Or, "Yeah, maybe others can do that, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, but I'm a normal human being. I cannot do that." So in order to counteract that limiting thought, we'll do this meditation. And so give yourself a couple of minutes to settle the body and the mind. So that the body feels relaxed. You do not need any tension to hold your posture. And the mind is resting on the body. And at the same time, it's very alert. It is very aware of every moment the mind is resting on the body. And then recall your motivation from the beginning of this session. And repeat that, refresh that in your mind. And then let your awareness further descend into your body. Right down to the ground. Be aware of the sensations where your body is in contact with the cushion or the chair. Let the mind quieten down. And let the mind simply witness whatever arises in the mind. Breathe naturally without any force. Let the breath do the breathing while you observe the breathing. And then visualize yourself in a state where you are flourishing, in which you experience your own greatest happiness, feeling totally fulfilled. How would that look like? And in that state, what brings you the greatest sense of meaning, or what makes you truly happy? And when you have some idea about that, then with every time you breathe out, you think, may I realize my own fulfillment, my highest joy. May I truly be well and happy. And you repeat that again and again every time you breathe out. And every time you breathe out, you breathe more life into this vision. And now imagine that you realize here and now such well-being. Imagine that you experience yourself flourishing, that you experience your greatest happiness right now. And try to feel that it is really true, it is actually happening. Yeah, maybe you feel it's not completely there, something is still missing. So if that is the case, then we maybe need to realize that we are not able to realize our fulfillment on our own without the help of others. So you can ask yourself the question, what you would love or like to receive from those who are close to you, that is going to help you. To realize your fulfillment. What do you need? What would you love or like to receive from those that are further away from you? And what would you like to receive in the short term? And what in the long term? And what would you love to see from the world around you, so that it enables you to realize your highest ideals, your greatest happiness? And then imagine that you receive everything you need to fulfill your highest potential. And we can do that with every breath you take. You generate a wish that you may receive all that you truly need from moment to moment, day to day, and year to year. And every time you breathe in, you imagine that you receive the kindness of your fellow sentient beings around you. And with every breath you take, you imagine that you receive all the blessings of the enlightened beings. You visualize that all you need is flowing into you, especially all that you need in order to realize your highest potential. And then, having received everything you need, you could wonder, what would I love to offer the world around me? Having my own unique background, my own interest, my own abilities, my own passion, what will be the best I have to offer? And you can think about those that are close to you and those that are distant to you. And you can think of what you have to offer in the short term or the long term. What makes you happy in what you have to offer? And what makes others happy? What are the greatest goods you can imagine sharing with the world to bring about the greatest possible benefit? Try to imagine it. And then with every out-breath, you can imagine that you actually offer this to the world. You offer it here and now, whatever is going to bring the greatest benefit, whatever is going to help to alleviate the world from their suffering, whatever is going to help others to find their fulfillment. Every time you breathe out, you give that to the world. And then maybe you think, well, this is just a projection of the mind. So therefore it's not real, therefore it doesn't work. But think about all these other projections of mind that we have, these in general negative projections. These projections, although they are not real, they do function in the sense that they have an effect on us. They create suffering. So in the same way, these projections, these positive projections of our own potential and the fulfillment of that potential, and how we can benefit sentient beings with that, they also have an effect on ourselves and most likely also on others. They can become a very positive, they can become a very positive force. That can be the motor for transforming your life and the life of others. Visualizing in this way is not wasted time. It's actually very well used time. Very beneficial. Reinforcing your potential, who you are in essence, allowing yourself to live life to the fullest, and being prepared to share that with all sentient beings. It starts in the mind. It starts by thinking about it, how it looks like, how it would work, how it would work out for others. Every action starts in the mind. So when we can visualize this, then from there we can engage in actions that are actually gonna make this happen. And so with that, we can dedicate all the positive energy that we gathered by doing this meditation and visualizing our own fulfillment of our potential. And all the positive energy that we gathered by listening and reflecting and asking questions and so we're going to dedicate that to all sentient beings, that they all might find relief from their suffering and find every happiness they need, all the temporary happiness, all the lasting happiness. And you can visualize that your body in the nature of white light is sending that out, that white light to all sentient beings, touching them, releasing them from suffering, giving them everything they need. And they all transform into happy beings, smiling at you, very grateful for what you have been doing. And that puts a smile on your face. And you feel fulfilled in your heart. And motivated to do this again and again and again. And then I'm going to thank you very much for being here today, for all your input, for all your suggestions. And there is a suggestion for getting rid of long-formed addiction. Let me think about that and see what comes to my mind. Thank you for that. And I'll see you all tomorrow, same time.
Thank you, Venerable, so much. Thank you, everyone.
Welcome.
Yeah.
See you tomorrow.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.